There is a very serious situation on the border.
Straining the already broken U.S. immigration system. This is a, quote, humanitarian crisis on steroids.
Pretty clear we have a bigger problem now than we've had in years. And these policies have turned into becoming a magnet.
The president of the United States still hasn't been to the border. The vice president went to El Paso, long ways away from the epicenter. And the Secretary of Homeland Security says the border is closed and secure.
Have to get control of our borders.
Over 12,000 people from Haiti, Mexico, other countries. This is utter chaos.
This is a huge failure of leadership, but one of the leadership things they teach us is that we have to think about what the military calls second and third order effects. In other words, how a decision impacts future results and how a poor decision can take a serious situation and make it even worse.
The failure to protect the border, the failure to care about national security leads inevitably to a disaster.
The problem is we don't have order and we don't have process.
What they're doing now, the lack of process, the lack of border security, is actually inhumane, that in and of itself.
It's failure compounded by failure.
It is barbaric is what it is to do that.
Yeah.
I see them walking across rivers holding packages above their heads so that they don't drown in the water, or a child who's abandoned in a little reed basket.
I mean, 12,000 people. They had a picture of a 3-year-old kid who's in basically a car seat and just left there. And this is horrific. And the Biden administration is clueless.
They're encouraging people to come when there is no plan of action.
Right. None of the process is being put in place here. And I think that process is what is failing. And we're failing at a miserable rate. And we're putting human suffering front page on the papers. And we look like, as a country, we have no idea what we're doing.
We are learning that the Biden administration has released thousands of Haitian illegal immigrants into the U.S. That directly contradicts the stated policy of immediate expulsion.
The wall was stopped. We know there's been less enforcement at the border, less border patrol who are at wit's end. Texas and other border states are trying to do what they can. Because there's no wall in Del Rio, Texas, the Texas governor ordered Department of Public Safety to use their cars as the deterrent. I mean, look at that. Thousands of vehicles.
March was the highest month on record for illegal crossings until April, and then April was the highest month until May. May was the highest month until June. June was the highest month until July, when 212,000 illegal encounters on our southern border.
The Biden administration continues to claim without a shred of evidence that the border is closed.
What's your reaction to the images from the southern border?
Get it under control.
Get it under control, or you have it under control?
We will get it under control.
You need effective control of the border. That means you can't have people rushing over willy-nilly. You have to have a process. And then second, you have to have an intentional legal framework that people who are seeking a better life can use.
Homeland Security officials say thousands of migrants who were under that bridge have already been released inside the United States. Many given notices to appear at an immigration center within 60 days.
The United States of America cannot have a situation where thousands and thousands of people are rushing over our borders because they believe that there will be a better life for them. And Jordan, then they're met with this kind of condition.
Already at 1.2 million illegal immigrants, we're on a path to 2 million. And as long as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris refuse to apply the law, it's going to keep getting worse.
When the administration acts as if they've got something in place and that this is being dealt with, we know that's not true. The Republican Party is the only party standing up for Israel. This is a new paradigm.
Progressive House Democrats, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, wanted to strip the $1 billion from the bill for the Iron Dome anti-missile system, or they wouldn't vote to fund the government.
A growing number of Democrats oppose anything that would help Israel, even if it promotes peace. Supporters of Israel should take note. If Iron Dome can lose Democratic Party support, then there is nothing pro-Israel that won't be in jeopardy in Congress.
A few junior members of Congress running their mouth with policy that will be the end of the Democrat Party long term. If this is the party they're going to continue to embrace.
Speaker Pelosi, Leader Hoyer, they're also responsible for this. They might want to pin it on these 8 members that requested it, but they took the funding out.
Hamas can't do any real damage to Israel so long as the Iron Dome is functioning. Realize that for a second. That's the only rationale for the Iron Dome defunding, is that you want the Hamas rockets to be able to hit.
Who is the base that likes this? Well, it's the ultra-left progressive base that is anti-Israel.
They have the power to block common sense legislation that would protect Israeli lives and Palestinian lives, but at the end of the day, they are able to express one thing only, their hatred of Israel.
It is a shame that we are now in a position where we add to the partisan list of issues where we can't actually share common ground, is that the Democrat Party, I don't care what they tell you, is the party of Hamas. It is the party of terrorism.
The House voted overwhelmingly. It overwhelmingly passes $1 billion in funding for Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system.
The Iron Dome funding got pulled out of the main finance funding of the government, and because you had this uproar from about 10 progressives in the Democrat Party, all because of the Democrat Party. So Nancy Pelosi, instead of saying, no, we're going to have a vote on this, we stand with Israel, this is an issue it's a bipartisan issue.
The Iron Dome is a purely defensive system that Israel uses to protect its civilians against airborne missiles, including the thousands that Hamas launched at the country earlier this year.
I firmly believe our country must oppose selling weapons to anyone, anywhere, without human rights law compliance. The Israeli government is an apartheid regime.
This is not where the world's attention is right now, because there's not war crimes going on. There's not massive conflict going on. And because of the Iron Dome, whenever Hamas tries to start a conflict now, it's actually pretty quickly resolved, thankfully, because the system is so effective in preventing civilian casualties.
The 9 members who opposed it are facing huge criticism, justifiably too. And AOC roasted for breaking down in tears, if you don't believe that, on the House floor after failing to help her party block the bill.
Ironically, the squad member didn't even vote no, changing your vote to present.
This is a huge victory for grassroots advocacy, getting this restored so quickly, but don't let it be lost on any of our listeners. This is still at the feet of Democrat leadership in the House of Representatives, because they still granted the wish of these 10 Democrats. There might have only been 10 who voted against the restored funding, but Jordan, the vote wouldn't have been necessary at all had House Democrat leadership held the line.